recording. Okay. Also because I love storytelling. So lovely to talk to you, John. We don't have to change our tone. This is only going to be said between us and very few people.
Yeah.
So you were saying, so you started to hear about VR and AR back in 2014, and you understood that there was this new technology that was emerging into the market space, and you saw that it had this great potential, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think that appealed to the toy industry about it was this idea that, first of all, it could kind of bring toys to life in a way that, you know, we've always looked at interactivity. We've always looked at how you can kind of really engage with kids with toys, and AR seemed to be like a new frontier, seemed to be that kind of open up so many possibilities. And, you know, kids love tech just as we love tech, just as adults are fascinated by new technologies. Kids absolutely are. They're all born these days, and they learn it so quickly. It's so intuitive to them, technology, whereas sort of older people, my sort of generation can sometimes take a bit of time to get the hang of things or whatever. Kids, it seems to be sort of hardwired into them. I always tell a story about my eldest daughter, who is now 26. And when she was born, I've got good relationships with all the toy companies. One of them sent her a baby walker that was electronic, an interactive kind of baby walker. So you pressed the shapes and it said, this is the blue square, this is the number 1, and so on and so forth. And my wife took her around. She was just sitting up, so she was probably about 6 months old. And my wife took her around to the local playgroup, and there was an old-fashioned wooden baby walker. Same principle, same shape, same, blocks that you put into a hole in the baby walker. It had numbers, it had colors, it had shapes. And my daughter sort of like crawled over to it, started playing, pushing the shapes, which of course were just wooden shapes. So they didn't talk to her. They didn't light up. They didn't. And she turned around to my wife as if to say, this thing's broken. What's the matter with it? She was literally 6 months old, and she'd already kind of worked out the sort of, the mechanics of how sort of interactive and electronic things worked. And I think there's this kind of natural curiosity and fascination amongst kids with that sort of, technology. You're absolutely seeing these days, that generation is growing up very familiar and very comfortable with it. And I think the toy industry straight away thought, great, AR, VR, this can really kind of take toys onto another level. Mm-hmm. But this is where it all then started to fall apart, because nobody had kind of managed to marry the two worlds, if you like. The technology itself was fantastic, but it almost needed somebody to work out how to harness it to actually enhance the play value of a toy, rather than how to just make it look like a sort of a very clever sort of one-trick pony. The best toys really do engage a kid, and the child interacts with it, and the child kind of feels, that it wants to sort of not just sit there and watch it, if you like, but sort of really engage with it. And a lot of the problem, when we first had AR, VR hit the toy industry, a lot of these things, you just watched them do stuff. It was like a little show. But after the little show was finished, the kids kind of crawled away and went, well, that's it. I saw the little show. That was it. It didn't kind of hook and engage the child in with it. And then, of course, you had the inevitable backlash. The toy companies had heralded, this is the future of the toy industry, released a few products. They didn't sell at all. And then, of course, retailers became extremely nervous. Anytime anybody turned around and said, I've got an AR toy, they'd kind of go, right, next. And people go, no, hang on, I want to show you. No, they don't work. They don't sell. And they just move on. So you had the initial burst of enthusiasm. The problem, harnessing it to a play pattern that would work in toys, and then the backlash when it didn't. And I think, we can look back now and almost see where the mistakes were. We can almost see what the toy industry did wrong in that sort of first wave. And what you're now beginning to get a sort of a new generation, a new wave of stuff come through, which is harnessing the technology much better. There are things that I've seen that really do point to sort of some interesting opportunities, and yet still, as you said rightly, nothing has kind of crossed the Rubicon. Nothing has kind of gone from being an interesting idea or something that you look at and go, yeah, that's quite quirky, to a mass market, huge selling product. And this is the grail.
One thing has,
which is
Pokemon Go.
Well, yeah. Now, Pokemon Go. Let me just explain why I said nothing has. Because Pokemon Go was phenomenal, and I agree. But Pokemon Go wasn't aimed at kids, really. If it, the toy industry,
Very true.
The toy industry generally is classified as 0 to 10 years old. You will there are lots of caveats with that. Fastest growing sector of the toy industry last year was what they call kidult toys. In other words, toys being bought by adults for adults. A lot of adults are now buying into toys for there you go, absolutely. And this is a huge growth area. And of course, you do have some products that sit on that cusp age-wise that will appeal to a 10-year. Fortnite is a really good example of a game that clearly was not designed for 6, 7, 8-year-olds, but is absolutely picked up, enjoyed, and loved by that age group. You've got Among Us coming through now. You've got Fall Guys, which people are tipping as potentially one of the next big things. So you have these things that are cuspy, that start out really aiming at teenagers and young adults, but obviously the aspirational element of toys means that particularly sort of 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old and boys, perhaps more than girls, really pick up on these things quite quickly. But for the purposes of the general toy industry, it's classified as 0 to 10 years old. And that's why, Pokemon Go was an absolute phenomenon. I had 2 members of staff, both in their early 20s, who used to go out at lunchtime when Pokemon Go launched around our trading estate to catch Pokemon, because they were the age. I mean, my eldest daughter was a few years old when Pokemon first launched, and she used to love it. She had a poster on her wall and all this sort of stuff. So that age group kind of absolutely tapped into it. But there is still this challenge of how you get something to mass market into the and again, I suppose our focus is the retail toy industry. Pokemon Go was hugely successful, and where it's worked for our readership is Pokemon Go is just one of the things that has driven an abiding interest in Pokemon, which then trickles down and sells actual physical product. And that again is another aspect of this. It might not be that AR it's directly AR products that sell, but it may well be that AR hooks people in, and then as a consequence, in the same way Fortnite hooked people in, and now people are happy to buy Fortnite action figures or Fortnite, play sets or vehicles or whatever. And Pokemon has got a phenomenal business in trading cards. It's got a phenomenal business in, as you say, the AR side with Go, but it's also got a phenomenal business in consumer products, actual physical stuff that sits in toy stores and sells. And it's where AR sits now in terms of what's its role in the toy market. And that's the bit that I think the toy industry is trying to get its head around, is how do we make this, how can this work for us? How can we take what AR has got to offer and make it into a viable commercial proposition for the toy market? And I've seen, as I say, numerous, many different, applications and ways of doing it, but there is still a little bit of a gap. But it's the gap that's closing all the time, I think.
John, can I ask you, what have you currently seen? Who's out there doing good work today? And what have you seen that actually is? I mean, Richard North. I'm going to be the first. Stuff. I actually had a chat with him last week. This conversation we recorded. I'd share the conversation with you if you like. And I celebrated him for being one of the first real pioneers in the space, and I love Rick and Morty, and I'm also talking to Greg Edwards, who created the cup. And Greg, really nice Rick and Morty cup. It's a small thing, but my point was with him was like, here you've got if people are drinking coffee in the morning and they're usually grumpy in the morning, and then something comes to life, it's a perfect use case for AR. Like, oh, I can't be bothered. I'm tired. I'm grumpy. My phone. There's something funny, entertaining. I'm engaging, and there's an entry point to making it make sense. But that's still not a physical toy. It's still kind of
no, absolutely. There's a company called Hollow Toys, actually. They're in Ireland. They've got some quite nice things. There's another company called AR Discs, which is a sort of a newish startup. Again, and some nice ideas in there. But these are both quite small companies. And this is at the moment, one of the challenges is that the bigger toy companies in the main dipped their toe in the water, made huge errors of judgment in terms of product development, and then got scared and ran away. So now you've got the little guys going, we can harness this technology. This is wonderful for us. And they've got that kind of, you referred to being evangelical. They've got that passion and that sort of enthusiasm for it in a way that bigger toy companies sadly got bitten. And instead of going, because we screwed up, we've completely messed up, we didn't really understand it properly, they kind of go, AR just doesn't work with toys, and they've kind of become a bit closed-minded about it. So I think it kind of needs people with more of an open mind and more of a fresh perspective, which is why you're getting these people like Hollow Toys and AR Discs, who are not toy industry veterans, who are thinking, well, but we can see the possibilities, rather than, but if we just take this to the Argos buyer is going to laugh at us and go, do you remember 5-6 years ago when you tried to peddle this stuff to us, and we took a load of it, and then we had to sell it at a loss, below cost because it didn't sell. So we've kind of got to get past that element and get back to a time when we can try again with getting the successful marriage between the technology and the product.
So the other company, Draw and Code, I liked that. Did you ever see Draw and Code's product?
I kind of
like robots that battled each other. But it was beautifully innovative. And the other company that I think are doing something really interesting that you didn't mention is Firebolt Games. Have you heard of Firebolt Games?
I've heard of them. I've had no contact with them.
Okay. Yeah. So those are, and then you've mentioned yours. So I totally agree with the things that everything that you said. What about Lego? Did Lego crack it with the Lego house, the haunted house experience?
The honest answer to that is yes and no. You've raised a really interesting one with Lego, because that was one of the most divisive product ranges that has been released in the last couple of years. Lego were absolutely so positive and enthusiastic about it, and I spoke to a few retailers after it launched and said, Lego, really excited about this, and they went, don't see the point of it. And I went, really? I said, do you not think that this combination of physical, creation and building and construction and imagination together with AR is a really beautiful sort of, and they went, kids don't need it. Kids have got a great imagination. Why they don't, if they play correctly with Lego, there's plenty in a normal Lego set in terms of creativity and imagination. It almost took away the creativity to have these extra, it almost, it removed their imagination because they could see it. And actually, kids kind of liked it. So it really, I'm not saying that they didn't do a bad job on the product. It was probably the closest in terms of the mix of physical and digital.
It didn't sell, did it, very well?
That's the point. You see, these retailers who were pretty anti it kind of said to me, it's a nice little quirky addition, but it's not going to replace, it's not going to be to us what the big Lego sellers are, because almost Lego doesn't need it. And what was interesting is kind of they were right. I saw the product and quite liked it. But these retailers just kind of felt, John, I don't don't think Lego needs to do that. And it didn't really sell terrifically well. And it's there in the background, but it's, they're not singing and dancing and jumping up and down about it anymore. The new thing for them is this Lego video product that they've got with the app.
That's quite exciting. The music combined.
It is. It is. Now, again, Lego are making the same song and dance about it that they made about now we're going to wait and see how this does at a product level. I have to say, they sent it to us, and my wife found it, she actually decided she was going to give it a go, and she found the app didn't really work properly. She said, you tried to scan it with your phone and it didn't scan properly, and it didn't do what it said it was going to do. And that worries me a little bit, because I hope they haven't gone too quickly and launched it when the technology is not quite there. Because again, I think the idea is good. Absolutely. I think if it works as well as they claimed it did on their demonstration, good possibility. But as I say, we just really to do what they said would do. And again, that's one of the big challenges, is it's got to be quick, it's got to be something that kids can pick up and do, intuitively. If you have a go at something and it doesn't work properly, or it doesn't do what you think it's going to do, or what they say it's going to do, it's very, very easy to just walk away from it and do something else. And I think this is, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm watching this one with big because, as I say, Lego have said it's their, one of probably their biggest launch of the year. They're making a huge song and dance about it. So watching it with great interest.
And do you have any ideas in your own mind as what would make a good AR product? Do you have, like, for example, digital brochures? Do you think a digital brochure which brings a traditional brochure to life, showcasing the AR toys, because it saves on cost to reprint? You can update it in real time. You can add additional features. You could expand on the universe. So something like a digital brochure, the basic. Do you think people would shift from traditional brochures? I guess retailers, or
no, I really don't. I really don't. I think that is a little bit of a using the technology for technology's sake. I'm not convinced that it actually adds. But in terms of, as you say, what might work, it's a really good question. And it's, to be fair, not something I've given a huge amount of thought to previously. It's kind of always back and waiting to people come to me with ideas and go, look at this, and then think, right, well, what do I like that? Do I not like it? What's the, I've never sort of sat here and thought, oh, I wonder what would work. What I think is interesting is that far better minds than mine, toy developers, toy inventors, people who work in.
Sorry, John.
That's all right. Don't worry. These things happen. I'm very I'm very familiar with the joys of Zoom.
So you were saying toy inventors. The last thing I heard was toy inventors, and then you got cut.
Yeah, no, I was just basically saying, like, there's some fine minds that are probably working on this. People who do this for a living. I'm a publisher and a journalist, and that's what I do for a living. And there are people who design toys and who work with AR, and at the moment they haven't quite cracked this conundrum. But somebody, what I went on to say is somebody is going to find that bite point. I always go back to Skylanders from Activision. For years, people had tried to find the bridge between the video games world and the toy world, and it had crashed and burned every single time. And then 10 years ago, I got called into a back office of a PR company down in Camden to be shown Skylanders, and it literally blew me away. And I thought, there you go. It's taken probably the best part of 2 decades, but finally somebody has found this kind of this intersection between video games and toys. And it was extraordinarily successful for a brief amount of time. Then, of course, other people jumped on top, you know, and they lost their way. Activision in the end are a video games company, not a toy company. They lost interest. They didn't think that the numbers were big enough for them because they work on an entirely different sort of scale than most toy companies would. You know, what would be a successful line to a toy company, Activision wouldn't get out of bed for. You know, and this was part of the problem, that Activision very, very quickly lost interest in it. But you know, they'll and a bit like you said about technology, you know, at the time it was quite embryonic. It's probably developed quite a bit since then, and I've no doubt that, you know, in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, something is going to come along that will kind of hit the sweet spot. And as you say, if you look at what Niantic have been doing, there's got to be pointers there for how a toy company could potentially sort of look at harnessing that technology. But as I say, right now, you know, have I seen anything this year that I would say to you, oh, that's going to, you know, this is going to revolutionize the toy industry? No, I haven't. No.
An obvious one for me, actually, and I was discussing this with who was I talking to about this? I think Brian Collins. I mentioned Pac-Man AR. I was like, why has no one done Pac-Man in the same way as instead of Pokemon, Pac-Man, like the same concept, the same features, make it multiplayer. For me, that's just such an obvious product that I think people would jump aboard, because you're using GPS location-based tracking and you move around in space. You're basically collecting the little pills, and then suddenly ghosts start chasing you, and then you can. Yeah. For me, that's a win. I mean, it's like a really fun game that plays off our like 1980s nostalgia, or 79 already. Yeah. I don't know. As an example, there's very simple kind of transferable ideas in my mind that make sense, and I'm just saying it. I'm actually just putting it out there just as an idea. I'm like, why would no one do this? Isn't.
Well, and sometimes, you know, it starts with a simple question like that. Sometimes somebody says, why has nobody done this? The honest answer is, I don't know why nobody's done that, because you're right. It makes it in theory, makes a lot of sense.
Total sense. Pac-Man, AR, you become Pac-Man, and then like you're collecting those. It's this like, and the streets become your road. It is what Pac-Man is. We could do that, and everyone has the nostalgia. Everyone has the connection. You can download that, and it'd be really fun, and you can compete with people. And it's like, and it's not an expensive product to build. That's an easy buildable product. I'm putting it out there it's a free idea. I believe that is an obvious low-hanging fruit for a successful AR. So, I mean, who owns the licenses of Pac-Man? It's Activision? No.
I think I'd have said it was Nintendo, but I could be wrong there.
You're right. It is Nintendo. So who are the people in this space to look out for, in your mind?
Well, there you go. And the fact that I can't think of anybody straight off the top of my head absolutely shows you that this space is rife for somebody to come in and really do a good job in it. Because again, you know, right now I can't think of anybody that is doing.
Have you seen Fungisaurus?
No.
That startup. That's a really good guy in LA. I had a chat with him as well. He built his own product. He created his own characters. He comes from pure animation. He worked at a big animation feature studio.
Okay.
I think it was Pixar. I'll be careful, say that. So the character design is beautiful. The concept's beautiful. It's a bit like a Tamagotchi, where you've got to feed little dinosaurs. It's also connected to fungus. So there's a whole aspect of eco and nature and so it's edutainment. It's education, entertainment, it's playfulness. You build this dinosaur, you grow this dinosaur. It's kind of half dinosaur, half fungus. I think he really went, and he built it in his own time. And he's raised. It's really nice. It's really beautifully done. And he was actually at. I met him in New York. Got the business. There you go. Here's a little business card. Fungisaurus, a promo. If anyone sees this backwards.
Okay.
It's a really nice idea. I don't know what the character designs are really lovely. I don't know if anyone's if he's trying to get something like the product picked up. I don't know if anyone's picking it up. That's the reality.
Not that I've heard of. Exactly that. Not that I've. And this is it. This is it. This is the reality gap. Like I say, at the moment, the toy industry is kind of still nervous. Is still in that phase where they're.
Well, they got burnt. They got burnt at the beginning.
Is this really us? There's bits that they can understand and get their head around. That's it. Yeah, absolutely. There are things that they can understand, and there are things that they struggle to get their head around. And this was something they struggled to get their head around. And to some degree, when somebody from the tech community tries to develop a toy, they get it wrong because they don't understand what makes a good toy and what will sell and what will be successful as a toy. But then the toy companies struggle with tech because they know how to make a good toy, but tech, the tech thing is often a long way beyond their sort of frame of reference. So again, it needs some melding somewhere of the toy and the tech.
Here's my idea. Would you be? I've already talked to a gentleman about doing a webinar series or an educational series where you educate, you inspire, and ultimately transform people to becoming more digital natives. And I think it would be really beneficial to do that, to literally do a 3-part educational series with the old schoolers in the toy industry to really get them to start to understand what this technology is, how it works, and how it can make sense. How do we make it add value? And it's it's such an obvious thing because it's technology, but it's not about technology. The mistake is we get caught up in the technology. We think the technology is magic. We're like, oh my God, this is, because adults think it's magic because it's magic to them. But for kids, as you said, kids are like, well, they're digital natives. There's nothing magical about the phone or things lighting up or character holograms popping up. They're just born with it. It's completely normal to them. So if it doesn't add value to their universe and doesn't expand on the imagination, and somehow this is where everyone has screwed up with AR and VR, because a lot of greedy people got very excited very early on and they thought they could just literally recreate the physical world in the virtual world. And the physical world, the reason why we want to escape is because it's kind of dull sometimes, right? I'm not saying it depends on your life, but the idea is if you're going to bring people into another universe, make sure that universe brings you something new, that expands your field of awareness, that enhances your space of consciousness, your mind, your outer body. You become a psychonaut, you travel into new dimensions. You want that. That's the whole point of, you're not taking drugs, you're taking a virtual trip. Right? Into the universe. And the same with AR, it's overlay. So you're enhancing the value of the physical world. And so the process of just understanding that this is not a software play, this is a storytelling play. This is a content, it's story, it's embellishing the existing narrative. You've got a physical toy, animation. That's why animation is so important. If you don't have the knowledge of animation, you haven't grown up in that, and you don't understand the importance of good character design, beautifully animated movement, feeling the emotion, to getting the pathos, to getting that emotion through, right? To building on the universe, to building on what we already have in our minds. You still there? Frozen. Hello?
Yeah. No, I'm still here. You've frozen on the screen, but I can only go. You're back again, right? Okay. But I could hear you, but you kind of frozen.
I think the screen was like, you're talking too much, Luke. Stop talking. So, we good? I think we're talking.
Yep. That's all good. No, I agree. That's exactly it. It's not a software play, and I think that's the absolutely key element of this. It is.
Please continue. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and that's the bit, that perhaps people have got to get their head around. That is, and I think, if they can understand that might give them the route, the path to go.
You're marrying 3 worlds together. You're marrying technology, the physical toy product, and the universe and the animation, the story that universe exists in, and that has to seamlessly work as one and make sense. You've got it's got to extend out of a reality into a new reality, and you've got to see why you have to use it. If you don't understand, and you've really got to understand the product, so you've got to understand the board games. You've got to already live in the universe of the physical toy, of the board game. So and guides who spend their time coding and building these things, it takes a lot of time to to code and build this.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're an animator and you're creating stories, you're building kind of like universes like Pixar, you're already working for a big animation studio because you're getting well paid. And if you're making physical toys, you're getting well paid. So you've got to be crazy enough to jump into the unknown, to gamble everything, to have a sense of, I can make something work. I see it and I understand these, what is perceived to be completely disparate ideas and concepts, universes, but actually they act as one. So for me, the process, and that is my background is that's why I'm excited about it. And I'm also stupid enough to throw myself into something at every age. I'm like, well, all in, you know, it's fun. It's like, you know,
absolutely.
I've got no kids, so thankfully, this is, I play in this way. But so I feel that an educational process, and maybe this is something that we can explore together, where we educate industry and we take people on a journey from what not to do and why it's failed to what we can do and how it can work and how it and really to apply this formula of storytelling, it's animation, and there are key aspects of storytelling that you've got to tick off to make a good animation. Like Pixar nails it every time for a reason.
Absolutely.
Disney nails it every time for a reason. But they understand some fundamental rules that were developed by Disney back in the day by the 9 old men that you might know, you might have heard of. The legends who created all the great Disney. And these guys, they invented the rules. It's actually in the Illusion of Life, which is Disney's great handbook. If you go back to the Illusion of Life, it's all there. It tells you how to bring characters to life. And that has been applied throughout Disney, throughout Pixar. And when you stick to those rules, you can win. I believe, and this is an untested formula, but and there is also IP, like popular, what's good characters. Pokemon Go worked, not because the gameplay was great, because everyone loved the universe and you were catching something. So it was an extension of the universe. It was just a clear extension. I believe Pac-Man would work for the same reason. It's just an extension of the universe. So, well, it's fun. I can enhance the gameplay and bring value. And it makes it more fun because suddenly I'm active, I'm running, I'm moving because I'm scared I'm getting chased by ghosts and it's interactive. So it's all of those elements that make something work. And and it's not, but it's thinking in a particular way, which you need to educate people to do.
Yes, absolutely. And as you say, you do need people brave enough to, you know, because everybody's in their little compartments and probably, as you say, doing quite well in their little compartments. It does need somebody brave enough to jump out and go, I'm going to try something that nobody else has tried here. You know, as you say, Richard North is a good, I don't know if you've spoken to Darren Garnam. He's another one.
To Darren, to Toki?
Tokido, yeah.
I had a chat with him 2 days ago. But Darren's more just about the IP.
Yes, that's also true. Absolutely. That's, you know, this is his background and that's how he thinks. Yeah, absolutely.
He's not a creative. He understands the value in IP and so from my understanding. So maybe, but he's obviously very successful and very seasoned in this space. What do you see Darren doing that's unique in his?
Well, probably looking in places that other toy companies don't look. You know, he's kind of, you know, picking up this Among Us thing, for example. You know, I think Darren is kind of, as you say, that is his strength, his IP, is understanding how you can take a strong IP and develop a sort of a range around it, etc. So I think, you know, there are, you know, not all toy companies are stuck in the mud. You know, there's a lot of them have got good product development teams or inventors who kind of want to push the boundaries. But as you say, this is an interesting one because it probably is an intersection of different worlds. And almost maybe it can't be done by one person from one world. It almost needs a kind of collaborative effect impact where you've got people from the different worlds coming together to share and bring their particular skills and perspective. Because you know, you're absolutely right. The tech people will have a perspective, but they won't understand toys. You know, there's an argument to say the toy people have got a great perspective, but they struggle. You know, one of the things I mentioned about Darren is because he probably is a little bit more open to tech than a lot of other people.
He's open to everything. He's got this kind of very broad kind of, and he's feeling and he's learning and he gets. I think he's introduced me to someone. He actually introduced me to a genius company. And what I perceive as being someone he's clearly got his finger on the pulse. and I hope to have a chance to continue working with him, because I think we should. If you were interested in this, would you be up for doing this type of educational process?
Well, I mean, I'll certainly give it some thought. I'm very happy to sort of, one of the things with us is we've got strengths, and our strength is very much in the written word. Mm-hmm. We've probably avoided going too far down the webinar route. I don't really do podcasts. I don't really do webinars. It's something that's there in the background. We know that this new technology is coming through, but we're a small company. We're a small company with actually reasonably big influence, but where we've got that influence is probably in the written word. So in our print issue, on our website, etc., we've got very good sort of, if you like, database and an engaged readership. The big problem for us, like a lot of small companies, is the things that bring us revenue, the stream that enables us to keep going as a commercial viable business, particularly where you've got to be absolute to make sure things can work. The things that we know that work for us, are written word. And where we've sort of avoided getting too involved in some of the other stuff is simply the time. I've sat on a few panels, I've sat on a few webinar type things, and I'll continue to sort of, you're back again, right? That, as I was just basically saying, the magazine and the website kind of keep. So it's, and that's what we're known for. That's what where we get our engagement. That's where we get our traction, is sharing news across the toy industry. Do we have a platform of people in the toy industry who perhaps could do with knowing a bit more about this? Yes, I think we do, but it's how we get this information to them. That is the thing I've got to get my head around. My default setting in these kind of situations is to say to somebody, well, why don't you think about writing an article that kind of talks about some of these points, that sort of addresses some of the challenges, etc. And one of the things that you'd be quite good at doing that is you don't have, you're coming at it from a very good angle. You're not coming at it from a sort of, oh, I'm trying to flog a product here, so I'm going to sort of switch my narrative and switch what I have to say to suit my, if you like, to suit what I'm trying to say commercially, which is obviously one of the challenges. Sometimes when you tackling a subject like this, you need somebody who will look at it dispassionately rather than looking at it as, how can I sort of twist this almost to suit my own agenda. So in a way, I think you have got some interesting perspectives, you have got some interesting things to share, and it's just a case of working out how we can share that stuff.
What do you recommend? What's the best way to work with someone? How can I, because I don't know what your readership is. I don't know what your...
Well, our readership is toy community. So basically toy retailers, toy manufacturers. And then there's another sort of level beyond that, which is toy inventors and toy marketing agencies and all those kind of people. But our core demographic, our absolute core readership is toy shops and toy companies. That's 90% of who we're aiming at with everything that we do. Now, there will always be a community that grows up around that, and we try and sort of look at the sort of broadest possible number of people that we think would be interested, but it comes back down to that core. And this is one of the reasons why, for example, Pokemon Go thing was going crazy. Our angle wasn't Pokemon Go. Our angle was, will this newfound love of Pokemon translate into selling physical Pokemon product? Because that was what was of interest to our core audience, which is toy shops and toy companies. And that's the challenge. The challenge is you're in an area there. I could, there's a website called Mojo Nation, which is more about inventors. It's more for the kind of toy inventor community, and they go into a depth that we can't go into. There are magazines like Develop, which is more about software developers, and again, they will go into a depth on certain things that we would never hope to get to, because in the end, different focus. You know, our focus is what toys are being made and will they sell in toy shops. And while there is, as I say, there are bits around that, which is fine, you know, because lots of different things can sort of play into that, but ultimately our focus is always physical toys being made by toy companies and sold by toy retailers, and that's kind of our core focus. And that's where everything we do in terms of content strategy, everything we do in terms of what we're writing about, what we're covering, you know, we have a whiteboard at the office, and one of, you know, when we're onboarding new people, and one of the things on the whiteboard it says is, would the Argos buyer care? And it's used as the kind of arbiter for, you know, if, for example, a new person comes in and they're thinking, well, is this content relevant? You know, I always want them to think, would the Argos buyer care if we ran this? Or would the Argos buyer go, well, that's all very nice, but nothing to do with my world. You know, I want to know what products are coming. I want to know whether I should buy it. If I do buy it, what is that company doing to move that product off my shelves, or, you know, out of my warehouse into consumers' hands? And that's kind of the nub, the real core of what we do. And this is where the challenge comes with something like AR, because it's kind of playing around the edges of where we are, and just occasionally it comes into our world, but it is almost a different focus, and it is about trying to work out what, as you say, almost what we're trying to say, what are we trying to achieve, what's the end game, what's the play here. And this is one of the problems, or one of the challenges with the toy industry and VR and AR, is understanding where the intersection is, understanding where the bite point is, that meeting between those two worlds, and what it means for people in the toy community, because they understand, you know, what makes a good toy. They, you know, they want to know, how can we sell more toys? You know, if you're a toy company, how can I, you know, put a range into the market that's going to, you know, be successful, sell well, and bring me lots of revenue and profit? And it's the same with toy retailers. What should they be stocking that consumers want, that is going to allow them to make a lot of money? You know, again, Pokemon Go was hugely successful, but if the retailer couldn't get involved with it, which they couldn't, because it was a direct to consumer play between Niantic and the end user, the retailer was not part of that equation. So retailers didn't get excited about Pokemon Go in the same way we didn't get excited about Pokemon Go, because it was kind of to the side of where we were. But this is where,
off the back of a physical product, where it's like,
that's it. That is it. Exactly. If somebody said,
buy the physical product, and then you get a QR code or a link that opens up your particular application.
Yep, absolutely.
And that comes
That's it.
enhancing the physical through the digital, and then you go off. So you have, and there's a motivation to buy the physical, and then there's a motivation to
that's it.
download
it. And that is exactly it. At that point, that becomes interesting to us. But without that point, it all becomes a little bit nebulous and a little bit kind of, you know, where is this in terms of our world? So I think, look, I've got an 11 o'clock meeting that I've got to run off to. I'll give it some thought. You give it some thought, and let's sort of see where we go. I think it's good to have the conversation. It's really good to, you know, to get your take on it, because of somebody, you've got you're coming from a very, very different area and background and perspective, which is good, because that always helps in terms of framing it from our conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll give it, I'll let me sort of mull that over. You know, hopefully I've given you a little bit of more of an understanding in
really
terms of.
Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your time and your insights. It's been lovely to talk to you and connect. I really appreciate it.
And have a great weekend. And yeah, let's stay in touch.
Lovely.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for your time. I'll share the video with you as soon as it's uploaded.
Yeah, that sounds good. I look forward to it. Cheers.
Take care. Have a great day. Bye.
And you. Bye.